What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday, and
Monday.
Weren't we not doing the singing, John?
No, we
No,
were.
dude,
Tyler
we're
wasn't
doing the
at
singing.
one before. He does the singing. He's the
So,
lead.
My bad. I forgot.
You're taking this is all I can contribute at this point is my lovely voice.
All right, so maybe we'll just leave it to you now.
I just did.
I know. We're going to talk about
I'm
this.
going to come up with a rap. What else? What else rhymes with Monday? Sunday.
Sunday.
It is Sunday.
It is Sunday.
It is Sunday.
Next week. I'll do it for the McGee's.
Well, we have Shane from Alair Homes on the podcast this week. And if you guys aren't familiar with Alair Homes, they are a franchise or a company that has figured out how to franchise the building industry. It's an interesting model. There are obvious...
they've figured out how to integrate a franchising model into the building industry.
That's
I don't know if they've necessarily they've franchised the building industry.
Yeah, the entire building industry has been franchised.
You're all
as
screwed.
Of today. But it's a good conversation, and there's a tremendous amount of positives that can come out of it. Obviously, there is some let's call them negatives that might not work for everyone.
Hesitation.
Yeah, that's a much better word than negative.
Just trying to be professional.
Yeah, so our job is to shed light on different business models. It's your job to look up if this is a fit for you, if it makes sense, if it's hey Tilly, if it's something for you, but it's just us putting another business model on your plate that you may not be familiar with and seeing, if I don't know, what do you think of it? As Tilly's behind me giving me high fives.
As always, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Talk is cheap. The folks at Duration will tell you that their best customer is someone who bought the product 18 months ago or 2 years ago, installed it, and then circled back to see how the product and their craftsmanship performed through the seasons. If you're serious about your work, take a serious look at Duration. And to learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com. Shane, where are you?
I am down in Naples, Florida.
Oh,
specifically
Florida.
at the moment, I'm at a children's education center that we're renovating. So this has been my Sundays for about 7 months, and will continue to be until this damn project's wrapped up. So,
you're from New York, or do you live in New York?
Yeah, no, I'm from New York. My wife and I moved down here 3 years ago. She had some serious health issues, and as much as I love shoveling snow, sunshine's a lot lighter and she's a lot healthier. So here we are. I'm adjusting slowly but surely. Moving
John,
from Hudson River fishing to ocean fishing has been my biggest challenge at the moment. Totally different world.
How long ago did you move down there?
It was 2017, end of the year.
Nice.
So 3 years this past December.
Where in New York were you?
Troy originally, just north of Albany. We were living Saratoga Springs area the last 10 or so years.
My wife's family has a place in Greene County, which isn't far from there.
Yeah, my mother actually lived down that way. Yeah, my mother had a boat on the Hudson down in Athens. They lived on for a while.
Nice.
It's a nice area down there. It is. That whole area, the Hudson River, unfortunately, is like you look at it today and you think about what it was 40, 50 years ago, and boy, has it changed. It's, all the industrial business, everything's just kind of dried up.
Yeah, it's crazy though. We were just talking about this. I feel like possibly with Dwayne that there's like a resurgence with people moving out of New York City there and dumping a lot of money into that area, and then Hudson is blown up.
Yeah, I've got a guy that I stay in touch with there in Saratoga, and he said the same thing. He said the amount of money pouring into high-end renovations up there he's used to it. Saratoga Springs, Lake George, Lake Placid, that area, it's normal. But I mean, even where I'm from in Troy, it was such a historical town, and the architecture and all the beautiful brownstones, the place just turned into, I hate to say it, depending on who's listening to this, but a ghetto. Right. Yeah. And now people are starting to bring money back in and bring jobs back in. And I mean, it's such a good thing to see. But it's crazy that it's taken this long, Yeah.
It's true. And I mean, we were just talking about with these guys that you'll drive through that area and there'll be a completely renovated 4-story Victorian, and then like a trailer next to it.
That's
Just
Athens.
the polarization between the two is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some serious disparity there. But you know what? It's kind of similar where we're at down here in Florida. It's probably one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest neighborhood in the United States. Yet where we're doing this education center, it's where everybody that keeps the whole town running lives, where it's actually somewhat affordable. And the same thing, you go from one extreme to the other, where it's all billionaires on one street, and you drive 10 minutes, and it's affordable housing. So what I've kind of come to accept, because the pretentious side of this area took a toll on us at first, and we started to realize, right, it takes all types, and that billionaire money brings a lot of benefit to the others. So we try to keep it balanced and think about that whenever we drive by these homes, where we think to ourselves, boy, there's so much money sitting there for a house that these people stay in 2 days a year. And
that's the most important thing, is finding a balance there, right? So that those people aren't running the people out of town who have been there for so long, but also they're at least contributing to raising home value and creating a decent place to grow up in, and a decent community. I feel like you have to find that balance. It can't be one or the other.
Yeah. If you want to, I feel like that's necessary if you really want to be somebody who lives their lives with some level of fulfillment, right? Where you're not just chasing a dollar, or you're not just chasing an image. If you really want something that you enjoy doing every day, you do have to find that balance in life. And I think growing up an entrepreneur, you hear people. I just remember as a kid always hearing, well, you got to have work-life balance. You got to have work-life balance. And once I became an entrepreneur, I realized that didn't exist. You have to meld the two. Like, you have to chase something you really love, because, I can't personally avoid it. Like, I eat, sleep, and breathe whatever I chase. Right. So that drew me into the car business at an early age. And I'm kind of glad I did that. But it's, you continue to find things as you grow and evolve, things that you really want to chase. And, 120-hour week doesn't feel like 120 hours of work at that point.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fulfilling.
When you say car business, how did you get into that?
I always grew up a car guy, and I started in the shop, detailing cars, worked for a body shop at an early age, and just really found that, again, I didn't mind working. I was real young. I was out on my own at 14. So it was a couple years before I could legally get a job per se. So I'd find some shops. I mean, that business is, similar to the trades business. You could get odds and ends jobs if you were willing to do the dirty work and show up every day. So I worked my way up through body shops, ended up in a car dealership, and got into car sales. And that's kind of where I feel like kind of cut my teeth on the business side of things, starting to understand all the mechanics of a company from the back of the house to the front of the house, and ended up owning a restoration towing company just outside of Albany, New York for a number of years. So, my passion was building cars. Unfortunately, to make a living in the Northeast, you do collision work too, and towing. So there was the good and bad of it, but that was my background. That's really still today that's my getaway. I just get in a car and go. I could drive for days and be a pretty happy camper. But that same eye for design, and frankly, what I found after I met Blair was this industry, as it relates to renovation. I mean, new build's not drastically different, but there's a lot of similarities, right? Where you're dealing with a client that, unfortunately, due to a lot of the television and shows out there, they've got unrealistic expectations sometimes. And there's a lot of moving parts. It's not rocket science, but there's a lot of moving parts, and they all have to come together pretty seamlessly. Otherwise, the client's not happy, no matter how good the quality of work is. I also struggled in the Northeast. Down here, I found it's a bit different, because people can drive a nice restored car year round. In the Northeast, people were garaging them for 8-9 months out of the year. And they didn't like tying up the money that it took to really restore a car correctly in the garage. So we were always challenged with what a client wanted to pay for and what we were willing to put out for work.
Yeah.
So we did a low volume of restoration work, because we just I didn't really care that a client couldn't tell the difference. There's a lot of people that own classic cars that have no idea what they're looking at. We see it down here. I see a lot of very wealthy people that live in homes, and I walk through them and go, "Oh, I wouldn't have accepted that." So I had the same issue with the car business, that it was tough to make a living in the Northeast due to that. Insurance companies regulated everything. You tell a client you're going to have to pay the difference. It was not easy. So it was that was kind of just where I fell in, because that's what I enjoyed. And,
so you were working in the car industry until you moved down to Florida, or had you been doing construction prior to moving?
Yeah, no, I got involved with Alair kind of in the background in construction in 2013, 14. Frankly, it was curiosity more than anything else. A friend of mine, we had a startup company, so it's a really long story, and I'll save the whole thing. But when I closed my shop, I had a real bad partnership situation, and we decided to wrap up the shop, and I was trying to figure out what was next, and I got pulled into an auto asset startup. We moved cars through bankruptcy, leveraging Garageman lien laws. And it was a great model, and it was fun. But one of the founders was also an executive business coach. And we had raised some seed capital, and he didn't want to burn through that. So he said, "Hey, I'm going to take a consulting client. I got this interesting opportunity." I was like, "Well, who's the client? You're kind of particular about who you get involved with." And he's like, this Canadian kid's figured out how to leverage franchising in custom homes. My first comment to him was, "Man, you better be getting paid really well, because that can't work. You can't homogenize real custom work, right?" So I started kind of paying attention and watching what was going on, because it just seemed interesting to me. And a year and a half later, I was in a conversation with Blair, and just decided to kind of come in as a consultant to him initially. And I think
Blair started the company.
Yeah, Blair was the founder of the company. Yeah, Blair and his wife, Allison.
So Blair was taken when he went to start the company name, so he just put an A in front of it?
No, because
Allison
and Blair. Yeah,
wow.
we always give him a hard time. Allison sounded terrible, so Alair it was.
Makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of thought into that, right? Personal thing. I mean, you guys know
Till he gets divorced.
Yeah. That might be a slight problem, but
gotta find another chick with a name who starts with what else could work with Lair?
Yeah.
Claire. Clair Homes.
So you had consulted, so a year and a half, the guy that you had partnered with on this startup was consulting for him, and a year and a half later you were introduced to him just because you were paying attention to what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was a curiosity thing. I mean, this is an odd thing, right? Because again, when I heard franchising at first, all I thought about is, I hate to say it, but you think about McDonald's, you think about Dunkin' Donuts, you think about these chain, because franchising is prolific in the food industry, and it's prolific now in education, and it's prolific in, hospitality, and even in our industry in the mold remediation and flood world. But, that was what I knew franchising to be. So, I started to try to figure out, well, how in the world could you do this in this industry? And it was the homogenization of just the things that we all do the same that was kind of interesting to me. And I didn't understand, well, how can you just do it there and allow autonomy everywhere else with these guys? So I started to understand the mechanics of the business and the industry as a whole. And
how did you
Blair
do that?
Approached me.
How did you start understanding?
A lot of phone calls, a lot of reading. I talked because I had kind of been working with them a little bit early on, just in the background. So I actually started talking to a lot of the partners and trying to understand, why would you do this? Right? At the end of the day, if you're really good at what you do and you've got an established business, what were you missing, or what was the benefit here? But most importantly to me was what I had been told from day one was the intention here was not to franchise to start with. All right. So the idea that it evolved to this, I wanted to understand why and how. And it really boiled down to finding the people in this industry that had the same belief system. And that resonated with me because I'm so particular with cars. Right. So when I recognized that, okay, he claims at that point that he's only looking for people in this industry that really care about the client experience, really care about the quality, want to make a better living, maybe want a better quality of business, but won't do so at the sake of, diluting any of the other things. I kind of found that hard to believe because, again, franchising to me is sales of franchises. That's what franchisors are normally in it for. So I started questioning some of the partners. I started reading a bit about, looking into the kind of the historical data of the industry. Again, being in the car industry, it's very similar. It's pretty archaic from the body shop perspective. We haven't really changed what we were doing for hundreds of years. And as business becomes more difficult and, technology comes along and people start looking for more efficient ways to do things, you kind of have to evolve. So I wanted to understand that what he was saying was that what he was saying at that point to me was that he was only looking to bring together those types of people. So I kind of tried to disprove or prove that. I talked to 32 of their franchise partners at that point, primarily Canadians. This was kind of early on, right? It didn't start scaling into the US until 2014, 15. That's part of why he had kind of started to engage me. It was frankly, it was easier than I expected to understand this industry because of the similarities to the auto restoration and collision space. So I also, as a kid, I was, 12 years old. I remember my mother thought I was nuts because for my birthday, I asked for lumber and insulation, right? So I framed my first room because I wanted out of my house. I wanted in my garage. So I knew a bit about the industry. I knew enough. I had a lot of clients that worked in this industry in the car business. So it was really, for me, I'm a bit of a sponge. If I want to try to figure something out, I'm just going to go and soak up resources, read everything I can, talk to everybody I can. And like I said, I felt like I had a good enough understanding at that point to say, yeah, this is a unique approach that I felt solve for a gap that this industry had in relation to actually bringing those minds together and collaborating versus this cutthroat approach of not enough, right? There's almost a scarcity mindset where this industry is massive. There's so much opportunity in it.
At this point, are you presenting yourself to Blair, or is Blair looking to bring you on? Like who's
Blair was looking to bring me on.
And just based on, the connection between obviously the other partner and probably understanding your background. So you going in and talking to the 32 other partners, I guess let's go back to why Blair, as much as like why was he trying to take his home building company and franchise it? Like what was his real reason for wanting to do that?
That's a good question. That was my big question. So when he and Allison started their company, his background was mainly commercial. He was doing framing, concrete work. They had moved out to the West Coast, Vancouver Island in Canada. Allison has a design eye. She's a designer, and they wanted to get into more of the relational stuff. They like custom homes. They like renovation. They like the client-facing side of it, the relational side. And the first two opportunities they had were actually a family member and a member of their church. So the fear was, there's a great opportunity for us to kind of cut our teeth and show what we're capable of, but we're afraid of damaging those relationships. So he took at that time, really more commercial approach, which was, we're going to sit down, we're going to plan this thing on paper. We're going to be that person that is the expert guiding you through this and helping advise you on what we would do. And only once we've gone through this exercise and we've really determined, what are you trying to accomplish? What is it going to cost? Where can we value engineer? Are we going to move into construction? In that whole process, both the planning and the construction were done in an open book atmosphere. So they were saying, hey, here's what the costs are. Here's why. Here's what we're charging. And they removed anything that could, I think, create tension in the relationship. They had a lot of success quickly, and they tried to open a second location. And that's where things came off the rails, because they quickly realized you can have good management, you can put a great team in place, but they don't care about your personal brand like you do. It's not their reputation in that market. They had happy clients, but it wasn't that kind of level of raving fan they were used to, where there was this evangelism and this close relationship, and they became friends. So a friend of Blair's, well, actually a member of their church, not a friend at that point, reached out and said, hey, I like what you guys are doing. I want to partner with you. I want to open a third location with you. And the immediate response was, no way. Like, our hair is on fire. we're stressed out. We're just trying to figure the second location out. Long and short, he was a very persistent individual. He ended up being the first, what I would consider, franchise partner. They decided, well, if we just stay consolidated and we open together out there, but we use our accounting, our bookkeeper that we have in house, we use the same marketing firm we're using, and we stay tight there, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to staff you up, lower risk. And that individual took off like a rocket ship. I mean, it was 12 months time. That location hit the same level of volume and the same quality of projects that had taken Blair and Allison 4 years to get to, because he just didn't have to wear all that. So they opened a third location with another one of their managers, made him a minority owner, and replicated this to a fourth office. And at that point, that's where Blair started reaching out saying, what are we doing here? How can we replicate this? How do we continue to make it a more formal structure where it's fair for everybody? And they kind of realized through a lot of advisors, well, you're effectively franchised, because those third and fourth offices, they were just saying, hey, 5% of our sales will go into this bucket, and we'll collectively use that to continue to build our processes and systems out and develop training programs and hire consultants. So that was kind of the beginning of what it is today. And in 2012, they just kind of formalized it and said, all right, well, you know, what matters to us is that it is a group of like-minded people and everybody comes to the table. The mechanism to actually put some structure around that is a franchise structure, right? I mean, try to take 150, 200, 300 builders and get them all to collectively work on the same thing. It's challenging. It takes structure, and you really have to think it out.
That's so, you know, my understanding of kind of this model and the benefit I see from it, you know, because we've chatted before, is that that's what you're trying to eliminate. You're trying to eliminate the reinvention of systems and processes and the back end support, all of the stuff that most of us and people that listen to this that are in business hate doing. And you guys talk about, you know, I think you guys have a proprietary project management software. You have accountants and bookkeepers and people that can help support that back end. But the biggest thing is that you've really built these systems and processes and you're implementing them. And it would be as though me, John, and Tyler, you know, we built the same spreadsheets and the same processes, and we all operated.
Pretty sure we have.
that might be true. We should start a franchise. No, but that's really where the benefit is for us, right? Or for someone that would be interested in. It's like, hey, listen, like we've already went through this. You hear it time over time, is that, you know, the only way you become successful in doing this is you build processes to simplify, to remove yourself from the day-to-day, whatever the case is. It's you got into this industry because you like carpentry, you're a craftsman, you like design, whatever it is. It's typically not because I like doing the books, unless you're Ben Horning. But, you know, I mean, he was very upfront about it, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's, you know, I think that's what's most attractive when you hear about it, is that all of that's been figured out and I can just kind of go to work. And it sounds like that's, you know, maybe it happened organically, you know, with this third guy saying, no, I want to do this, being persistent and, you know, being, you know, effectively franchising at that point, you know. So I guess that's the, you know, the flip side of it, like from the negative side of it, for, you know, for me, it's the branding, right? So a lot of these guys, you know, you guys are looking for relatively established people. It's not someone that is, or I would say actually very established people. You're not looking to bring in people that want to get into home building. You're looking for other home builders that might be struggling with the back end and help support it. Now, the other side of it is the cost, right? You know, we can't ignore the fact that Alair is a business. They need to be profitable. So there's obviously going to be some sort of, I don't know if it's a fee or a licensing fee or if it's a percent of sales. I think you alluded to the 5% of sales. But what does that structure look like, and how does that, you know, how do you effectively navigate that with, say, bringing someone in on something like this?
Yeah. Well, so two things. as far as who we're looking for, it may sound a little vague, but we really look for people more than the business. Now, do you have to be established? Yes. That's frankly because, I mean, you guys all know you own your own businesses. It's not, you don't just get the systems, processes, and things dialed in and it runs and life is good. You got to be a pretty resilient individual, right? So no matter what tools and support we give you, it's still not easy. You still have to put the work in. So for us, as we started to move into the US, we shifted to this conversion model where we're only looking to partner with established business owners in this industry, because that's a risk mitigation factor for everyone that's here, right? I mean, to your point, these people are bringing their life's work here, and John Smith Builders now becomes Alair Homes, Southwest Florida. That's a tall order. That's a big ask, right? It is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into building it if it's 2 years old or it's 30 years old. So, for us, we need to protect that. And if we can't vet out that somebody's been through this industry, has dealt with troubled clients, has been able to build a good trade base, it's risky to us. So, that's number one. When I say we look for established people, there has to be an alignment in beliefs. It doesn't matter to me if you're 700,000 a year or you're 20 million a year. In fact, the bigger ones sometimes are more risky. So
how are you vetting that though?
Well,
let's use me as an example. You called me 4 years ago.
Yeah. And so in fact, I sent Tyler an email as well.
Did you?
Did
I respond?
No. So actually, same week as Nick.
I'm not surprised. An actual email?
Yeah. It's, you know what? It's one of those things, right? If I got that email and I was in your shoes, it's probably a low likelihood that I'd respond as well.
I wonder if I ever even read it. I'll be completely honest. I mean, I'll tell you if I read it and ignored it.
Shane,
I appreciate that.
Before you answer that, we haven't really alluded to what your role is with Alair.
Yeah. So effectively, when Blair asked me to join,
so pissed.
Well, this is 2017, John. You had left your original company, I think, at that point, before starting the new company, like beginning of 2017. It would have been probably.
Yeah, close to that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably because, believe me, your guys' activity on social media, to Nick's point, was a big thing for me, and I'll explain that in a second. But when we go through, and well, first off, sorry, Nick. Your question, why and how did I end up here and what do I do? Blair reached out to me because early on they had tried like the traditional franchise approach, franchise brokers, get a salesperson. What's a salesperson in it for, right? You look at volume home builders, they will tell a client anything they need to get that contract signed, because for them it's survival. It's not really passion. I've always worked in a very consumer advocate way, no matter what industry I was in. I'm frankly, in some ways, I think I'm a bit of a masochist as it relates to chasing something I believe in versus money. And Blair recognized that. And like I said, the friend of mine that brought me in today is the president of Alair Homes, right? So he had a lot to do at the beginning of this company. And he said, look, I'm looking for someone who's actually run a business, who knows the challenges. And no offense, you guys can appreciate this, I'm sure, right? Again, when we build a business in this industry, there's a lot of pride that comes with it. There's also a lot of ego in this industry. We all have ego. You have to have a healthy amount. But Blair's comment to me was, you've been coaching lawyers for 7 years. If you can help lawyers navigate how to build a better business, and you understand the legal industry and you understand the car business, I think you're the right person to actually have a consultative conversation. Because we're not looking for everybody. We really want people who there's a fit on both sides. And I need someone who can have that conversation at a business level, still understand the personal craft side of it, and not just be in the game to sell a franchise, but to make sure that we're kind of limiting the risk and protecting who all comes in here. So all I do today is look for and reach out and find those builders. That is all I focus on. A bit of a utility player. I help with some other things as we need to, but my role is to find people that I feel align with the culture, who I feel, based initially on research, seem to be more progressive, seem to be more open-minded, seeking something better on a daily basis. I think there's a lot of people in our industry that personal development and growth and continuous improvement maybe eludes them. Every industry, right? But again, this is just one of the more archaic ones because it's just kind of chugged along the same way for so many years. So that's my role. That's why he brought me into it. When I'm looking for somebody, I'm frankly, values are probably the first thing. You know, we're not a Ferrari and Rolex group of people. We'd like to buy some time back. We'd like to be able to do what we love, but have a quality of life to spend with family and friends. So we look for those kinds of things. Social media is a beautiful thing. You can get a pretty good window into somebody's values at a personal level. You guys are also pretty active, and I don't even know if this podcast had started yet, but you were pretty active on social media. You spoke a lot about working together and sharing and collaborating in the industry, like-minded people. So we try to take that and we try to look at the way you branded the business, the approach you take. Are you focused on client relationships and client experience, or is it just, you know, I think one of the biggest tells for me is when I find a company and the owner is either the owner's not even showing or talking about themselves, or they're the only person. And you've got an entire team behind that company and all they're doing is talking about themselves. They don't mention their team. Even in social media, they're not thanking their trade partners. They're not thanking their team. That to me is a low level of leadership skill. Right. And we're looking for a group of leaders here because it's a very different approach and model. So those are the kind of initial things. And then from there, it's conversation. You know, people can sell themselves pretty well. And I try not to get duped. Right. So it's having a chat. Is this an authentic person? Do I feel like this is a bit of a script they put together and this is the way they sell themselves? Or I can catch them on a random Tuesday afternoon and this is the way they come across on the phone. That's another important thing, right? Because when you have this many people working together, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be authentic. You got to be willing to ask for help where you need it. You got to be willing to give that help where it's needed and pay it forward and pay it backwards. So we look for those kind of behaviors. And, you know, Nick, that's in the first couple of conversations with you. It was just, it's an easy conversation, right? Your defenses don't come up. You're not, you know, again, I don't like random people reaching out to me. I do not like getting a phone call on a random Tuesday afternoon. Hence the fact, you know, Tyler, I send you an email. If I don't get a response, I'm not going to bother you.
Actually, you sent me two.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm persistent.
I must have ignored the first one and ignored the second one too. It was about a month apart though.
Yeah, rightfully so though, right? You got a lot of things going, man. And you know,
I'll be completely transparent. I can't tell if I ignored these or like just didn't pay attention to them. I wish I had a firm answer for you, but
all good, man. It believe me.
Ago.
I do this all day long. I expect probably 5% of people to actually give me the time of day, right? We really have been pretty quiet. We weren't out there, you know, the way we built this brand to date has not been the traditional approach of brand awareness, get out there. It's been a little quieter. I'm the only person that does this, right? So if I put a picture out there that says, hey, I'm looking for everybody that's struggling and needs help, there's a lot of those in our industry. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get bombarded and I just can't handle it. I'm sure you guys are very similar in your businesses. You're high quality craftsman type business. You're not looking for every client that knocks on your door. You're targeted in the audience you look for. You know, you let people know, hey, I'm not going to be the cheapest. If you want me for a $10,000 bathroom remodel with Chinese cabinets, this isn't the place. It's just not something that we're interested in doing. So we're kind of quiet as it relates to that. And we're trying to change that a bit now. You know, we feel like we're at a point now where, you know, again, if nothing else, we can help others in the industry understand why we do what we do and how, and you don't have to do it with us. You know, to your point, you guys share, I'm sure at a high level, at a deep level, I should say, versus what a 20 group or you know, RA maybe is a little bit more, but some of these groups that everybody gets together and shares, but there's still that I'm going to hold these cards a little close to my chest. I'm not going to give away all my secrets. If you get past that and you recognize, hey, there's a lot of people in our markets that don't deserve these clients, that aren't going to treat these clients the way we do, aren't going to do this quality of work. And you start to realize that if we collectively join forces, we can eat up some of that market share. We're not going to be taken from each other as much as you might think. We're just going to take more of what's in this market, and we're going to bring more clients into the right way to do this. So it's I guess it's kind of get off on a tangent there, but that is what we'd like this industry to continue to move towards. And I think you guys as well, right? Just share with each other and find the like-minded people and help them wherever and however you can, whether you're gaining from it personally or not.
So I feel like the biggest hang up with a structure like this for me would be quality control, as far as this is my business name. How are we going to ensure that everyone's stepping up to the plate, treating customers the way that they need to? Because realistically, there's no way that you could control the day-to-day operations of a business that was in the same town as yours, or a project that was in the same town as yours, let alone in another country. Yeah. So that would be my biggest concern would be, and I understand the structure of it, right, is to allow these people that it's their own company, that they're running it, that they control their destiny by how many sales. There's still the percentage of that that's going in their pocket. So it behooves them to treat customers the right way and deliver a certain quality of business. But at the same time, there's this entire network that's now a business that's signing up to have the same name as everyone else. And now you're allowing one person to potentially tarnish that reputation because they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain. So how are you guys dealing with that?
That's like I said, that is the biggest risk, period.
Public
right?
lynchings, I think, is what we discussed last time, right?
Public lynchings.
Just to set the tone.
Well, I mean, that's really what it equates to in this industry if you're not careful. It all takes is one bad project or client to sink decades of work. So and this kind of comes back to how do you actually put some structure around this before you grow it? And that was kind of that early approach that fortunately they took. So it's a multiple layers. First and foremost is, like I said, we're not just out there trying to bring people in for the sake of opening more offices. We're really just looking for people that have already proven that that's what they're going to do. That said, human behavior is not always easily predicted, right? And we get into personal situations at a family level that affects our business. So we also recognize that even good people will sometimes make some poor decisions if their back's against the wall. Our whole process is consistent. We've figured out how to homogenize the 95% of what everybody in our industry does the same. Maybe not, they don't necessarily do everything the exact same way, but whether you're doing a renovation or a custom home or a track home, 95% of the actual process of getting to that point is identical. It's that 5% that's different from market to market, owner to owner. And that's been quite an interesting learning lesson for me. But if you have a process that's consistent, right, a lot of this boils down to if you're a high quality person, you're a client relationship person, the process is what can actually deliver a consistent result where it's more predictable versus, taking a left on Monday because you had a bad Sunday. So that the accountability of all of us saying we're going to run every project the same, whether it's 10,000 or it's 20 million. From there, we have gates built into the system. So, we all operate, how do we get ourselves focused as owners and into the business development role and really leading the company, bring world-class project managers in, train them to the nines. We have a really strong training program. So we train the team the same. We spend a lot of time on mindset, even with our project managers, and we're training them to understand how to deliver that experience. and how dangerous it is if you're not communicating clearly to the client, you're not being honest through and through. Then the process in the proprietary software, the software has gates built into it. So, for example, you couldn't have a client's project. We can't get scope creep because the way the selections and everything are done on the front end, if the client hasn't triggered the approval in the software, it won't go as a payable to your accounting team. So your CFO is not going to pay that. So there's things built in there. As far as the actual physical quality of the work and the client, we come behind every project with obviously with surveys, but we also, in the pricing structure, there are things that happen throughout that if a client is not communicated to, it's going to raise an alarm bell quickly. If something is pushed through the system that wasn't approved by the client, it raises an alarm bell instantly. So at that point, your accounting team or your admin is going to reach out to your PM. So you as the owner don't have to keep that constant eye. And then our regional partners, you guys have met Dwayne a bit. We look for a regional partner who we know has, again, proven that they're delivering high quality work. We then basically partner with them in a way where they are our boots on the ground locally. So we require them to do 3 site audits on every single partner's location every month to make sure that there is no tail off. Nobody's starting to get lazy or get complacent. Our trade agreements are extremely tight. So if we get a hard bid from a trade, it's on a very clear scope of work. We're very clear with what our expectations are, and we can hold them accountable to that. So there's a lot of pieces to that, but
let me pause here for a second. So
yeah.
to speak to the trade agreement, you say it's really tight. So something that in the sense of legally, right? Like you've legally worked through this to make sure that, you have something that you can leverage a trade should they come back and try to charge an extra when it was already defined and it's a hard bid.
Yeah,
right? Like you're where I think, making the reference to when, a lot of us and a lot of people that are listening are probably like, all right, yeah, plumbing's 10 grand on this job. All right, no problem. I'll sign your proposal and that's it. There isn't that kind of paper trail, which I know goes, back and forth in, between the more intimate relationship with the plumber and contractual. Yeah. But you're saying that these are the checks and balances that you guys are doing, even down to the level of trade agreements.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 parts. Like you just nailed it. You can't just be, hey, this is what the contract said, so do it or else. Right. It's for us, it's equally as critical that when we put something out for bid, the scope is granular. Like you have to be very particular because you can't expect, a good example, this boardwalk and deck area that we built here. This is a weird area, right? So I've entered into this with this trade. Hey, this is very clearly what we're asking for. Here's the engineer's drawings. I'm going to triple and quadruple check before I deliver that to my client, who's the donor on this project, and say, this is exactly what we're getting and this is exactly what it's going to cost. If he comes back to me and there's an issue because of the site and his scope has to grow, he's going to get paid for that. But I've now been very clear with him and the client to say, this is exactly what he or she is bidding on. So we need to be fair to the trade partners too, right? If a trade partner bids on a renovation, I mean, we look at the Northeast, right? You get a lot of older buildings up there than we have down here. You don't know always what you're getting into. But if you come back to a client and say, hey, the plumbing just went from 14,000 to 23 because we didn't realize that we were going to have to reroute all these things to take that wall out because we didn't take the wall or open the wall up. The client understands that now. So I don't think it should be fair. We don't think it's fair if we as the builder take that hit to keep the client happy or the trade takes that hit. So if we're very clear on the front end with the scopes and the client understands that and the trade understands that, you have the ability to have an honest conversation where the client says, yeah, I get that, right? It's you set those expectations, you were clear, and here we are. So when I say tight agreement, legally, yes, but we believe it's our job to deliver as much information to that trade as possible and hopefully have them on site. I don't want them just saying, oh yeah, I mean, based on that square footage, this is the price. That's not good for them either, right? We would discourage them from giving us a price like that. We want hard bids. We want them to put their eyes on the project and ask the questions they need to ask.
So that goes back to Tyler's. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I feel like so as I'm listening to this, it's obvious you guys are implementing a business model and taking, this is what all of us who are looking to do high level construction or have a design process integrated or just kind of really define and pinpoint and maximize the efficiency of our business. And I know that we've had conversations within the industry. It's so tough. There's so many small companies because it's so hard to implement business model large scale. It takes so long to develop these systems to then integrate into your business and then grow your business over however many years. We all have 1-2 shots at this, and you guys are basically taking this and distilling it into a process that you can then sell in a, like, to put it bluntly, to other companies, have them buy in, whatever that is. And I listen to it. It's a business approach to it. And it's almost like you could take this model and you could implement this into whatever sort of franchise and everything else. You could implement this into any type of construction company. I see this almost that a lot of the industry needs structure like this, right? Yeah. I don't think that it's necessarily for every individual. I see there's going to be a lot of hang-ups for people, but on the flip side, I don't see a lot of this as a huge negative, because I think that there's a lot of businesses out there that are tarnishing our relationship as builders, as contractors, and I think that legitimizing things to a certain extent and creating a better experience for customers would help our industry. Yeah. Nick and John, the conversation that we had at the Kukin Expo with the guy from This Old House, Kevin O'Connor, right? One of the issues is that everyone owns a business. There's however many thousands of individual construction businesses that are 1 or 2 people in our country. And how are we going to change the industry? How are we going to bring people into this industry? And there's just no structure. And it seems like you guys are trying to find a way to kind of implement structure and implement systems and processes that could be scalable to our industry. Which I'm kind of just reiterating and summarizing what you're saying. But I don't find that necessarily such a bad thing. I know that we had this conversation before, and I know that there's going to be some hang-ups and everything else, but you got to look at the good and the bad side of things.
Yeah, totally. I think intentions are critical, right? I think in any business's approach, the intentions behind it will impact the end result and frankly the health of the organization and the longevity. One of the things that truly piqued my curiosity because like I said, I came into the looking at this as there's no way you can do this. One of the big things that changed my mind.
Why did you say that? Why did you say that there's no way you can do this?
Well, because again, to Tyler's point, it's a fragmented industry, and I don't think it's fragmented by accident. It's fragmented because there are very different intentions of those that are in it. Mm-hmm. There are people that are, they love the craft and the craft only. They got zero interest in scaling. Like they're, hey, I'm $500,000 to $1 million a year, but I love what I do. And then that's great. And then there are others that see this industry and the size of it, and they enter purely for the sake of making money. Mm-hmm. And those are usually, not always, some of them grow and evolve, but I think those tend to be, to Tyler's point, the people that give the industry a black eye. Because, they do a poor job of setting expectations. They are just trying to meet a dollar number and a profit number. And let's be honest, there's a lot of things behind the walls that clients don't know any better, right? So they cut corners.
I would argue that the industry's fragmented due to pay scale. For people, residential, I think that most people end up going off on their own because you cap out working for somebody. It doesn't matter how talented you are. There's not a lot of business structures in residential construction that are going to be paying carpenters $150,000, $200,000 a year, where there's a lot of other industries where people are making that, and that's not, you're not even making a lot of money. You're having a modest lifestyle and a comfortable lifestyle at that. And I think that most people end up going off their own because they want or need to make that to be able to have a family, to buy a house, to buy a new car. And working for somebody else, you're never going to have that opportunity. So I think the easiest thing is for people to branch off, start their own company, work by themselves, make that money, and they don't ever have any intention on scaling.
Yeah. That's a fantastic perspective. I mean, again, it's quality of life. Like you said, you continue to get to chase and do what you love doing, but you can just provide a lot more for your family at that point.
What about the financial side of it? So, like, going back to my comment, Alair's obviously a business, and they're in business to make money. So beyond the home building, this scalable model from a franchise, you talk about Blair, you talk about yourself, and then you talk about your regional partners. Is that kind of the gist of the hierarchy, we'll call it?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, we have a very small, what I would call leadership and executive team. For us, you have to stay lean if you want to make sure that you're delivering enough value to the franchise partners where there's incentive to even want to do this together from a financial perspective. Because, I mean, hey, we got a great culture, we got happy clients, that's all well and good. But to Tyler's point, we have to put food on the table and we have to make a good living. So if we were to build a structure where it became more expensive to be part of this than it would be to not be, that's not good. Like, you have to check all the boxes. We need you to know that if we partner with someone and they come in as a franchise partner, that they can be more profitable in this group than they could outside of it.
So I'm going to use your reference earlier. You talked about 5%. I don't know if that continues to today. I know it was early on, but 5% of sales, if is that how it's structured? So if I wanted to get into this and I wanted to become Alair Boston, it would be 5% of my sales would go to my regional part. Like, how is that format?
Yeah. So to your point, as far as the kind of the organizational structure, you've got the franchisor, and then we've got the regional partner. And the reason that the regional partner exists is kind of comes back to quality control. And, let's be honest, I know Boston probably better than anybody in this company, but it'd still be arrogant of me to come in there and say, hey, I can help you implement this and build a great business. No, you guys know that market way better than we do. So we look for someone who has those relationships at the local level and can support it. And then we basically split the royalty with them, and we put a lot on them and expect them to support that at the local level. That's a shift in business model. They go from doing renovations and builds to helping support others with their experience and background. As far as what the costs are, so yeah, it's a franchise. So you've got a license fee, it's a buy-in, it's a 10-year buy-in, and then you've got royalties. One of the things that we did very different from most franchise organizations is, again, let's hypothetically speaking, I've got a business down here and I do $2 million a year, and it's 30 projects. So, I've got a very different average project size than one of you guys doing $2 million a year on 3 projects. Mm-hmm. Your overhead on those 3 projects, not, obviously your trade, your supplies, all that stuff is pretty static. That doesn't change, but your administrative costs, you're not going to have to pay an accountant anywhere near as much as the person doing 30 projects for the same revenue. In this industry, it's usually just a royalty, and that you get no benefits of economy of scale. As you guys build your businesses independently, you're going to gain that benefit. As you scale up, you're going to realize economies of scale, and your overheads are going to reduce accordingly. We deliver that by separating out the accounting and admin side of things. Because again, your costs at volume, depending on your project size, are very different than others. The royalty is one piece. The royalty tiers depends on the amount of revenue you're doing. As your revenues grow, your royalty goes down. It starts at 4% of gross sales, and then it comes down from there down to 2.5%, depending on the revenue. The accounting and admin is separated out. It's basically pay per drink. So we share the cost of that staff. There's about 50 or 60 between accounting, marketing, operations, training, and software, and legal. So, we kind of benchmark at a total overhead, 7.5% to 8.5%. That's including the royalty. That's including any admin costs. That's including your vehicles, your rent, your insurances. On our side, it's the royalty, it's the admin costs, and then we all pay 1% back into our brand fund. So that's our collective fund at the regional or local level to build the brand, to put money into the community. Our partners will use that for cost of photography of their projects, their websites, social media. We'll do nonprofit events collectively, and we'll use that money for that. So it's really community brand building. So it's a total, when I say 5%, it's the 4% plus the 1% of the brand fund. So that's kind of stayed the same.
So and I just want to make sure I understand it right. So you're trying to essentially lock in that overhead percentage for each company. Is that right? Like by having this pool of, people that can help with sales, marketing, and accounting?
We're trying to reduce it. For us, frankly, not to sound terrible, but we go off gross sales. It's in our best interest to make you happy, to advise you and coach you to be the most profitable you can be for yourself. Mm-hmm. As far as the actual locking in, we've got partners that have much higher overhead. They want a lot nicer office. They want to have, the newest, fanciest trucks. That's fine. That's up to you, right? That's your business. You own 100% of it. You do what you want with your money.
So it's your buy-in, it's your royalties based on sales, and then it's another 1% into the overall brand marketing for the company or for that particular division.
That's basically for that region, depending on how many offices
you're telling
collectively.
Yeah, so you're saying, hey Nick, if we were at Boston, it's like take 1% and put that in an account. That's what you're required to do for branding.
Yeah.
And marketing. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So from what is, you talk about the regional partner, are they, I guess, are they recruiting people, or is it strictly through you? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go way back. You had said that, we're not necessarily looking to partner with a bunch of people, but from a business perspective, if you were introduced to 100 people tomorrow that all fit the persona of what Alair wants to be in the United States, I would think that you'd jump on it, and then it makes Alair more profitable, because if they are the right fit, right? The end goal is to franchise this into, whatever, hundreds of companies, because it makes the company more profitable. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, how does this, what the hell is it? Pyramid scheme. Like, let's just address that, right? Because
totally. I get it all the time, man.
Right. I want to address, like, I'm just going to ask, is that what this is?
No, because a pyramid scheme it's never ending, right? The only benefit in a pyramid scheme is selling more people into it. Mm-hmm. We're at a break even on a good day when we bring a partner in, because we want the barrier to be as low as possible. And there's only 2 layers. That regional partner's in. There's no second regional partner. Their only incentive is to make sure your business grows. So if the regional partner is paid on the same royalty we're paid on, our incentive and their incentive is to help you grow. Now, we also don't push growth for the sake of growth, because that's dangerous, right? So we're not incentivized to say, hey, Nick, you need to double your revenue. You need to double your revenue. We're building a very specific type of brand, similar to you guys. You don't just want to be the biggest builder. You want to be the best. We're building a premium brand. So we would rather temper growth, which is what we've done, for the sake of not diluting what everybody here has brought in. And none of these people built low-end brands. They're not known for being the cheap guy in their market, and they don't want to turn into that. So, if we had 100 people tomorrow, I'd be happy. Could I bring them all in? No, I wouldn't. Not at once. I would hope that they were patient, because if I tried to bring 100 people in here all at one time, it would make life difficult for all of them and difficult for all of our existing partners, because that would take away from the time commitment we could have to those partners.
Nick would.
What's
100%.
that?
Nick would.
Nick would.
Nick would be like, I'll bring 200.
Shane would be out of a job if Nick came on board.
Yeah.
Grabbing it,
I think that,
Man, I would be happy for that. Believe me.
Tyler, hold on. Shane, going back, what was your brand of your company before you started with Alair?
In the car business?
No, in this business.
No, I was not in this business. I was not in the construction industry when I came into
your
this.
partner that came in.
Yeah.
What was his brand?
He was an executive business coach. Blair hired him to actually try to figure out how to scale this. So his background was in helping, Fortune 500, Fortune 5 companies develop scalability.
So what were you guys going to do together when you guys started bringing funds in? Remember, you guys said you were compiling a bunch of funds, and then you guys said, let's divert that. Let's not use those funds.
Yeah, that was a totally different. No, we didn't divert anything. That was a startup company he and I were running. We didn't want to burn through that seed capital. I had to stay operational in that company, which was totally separate. So that company was moving auto assets through bankruptcy cases in upstate New York. A totally different industry. We both chased that because it was kind of solving an industry problem there. It was.
So walk me through how Alair got you guys started.
Yeah. So Alair in 2012 started reaching out to a number of different consulting companies, trying to figure out how to put some structure around this. Rob, the president of Alair Homes today, was a personal friend of mine. We were in this startup company, totally separate. He was constantly getting phone calls on this type of stuff. Hey, so-and-so wants to talk to you. And he gets this call from a gentleman here in the States that was friends of Blair and said, hey, Blair's looking for some consulting. He took Blair on as a client, totally separate from our startup company, so that he didn't have to take money out of our startup company at that point. That startup company ran into some serious challenges. And 2 years in, he's still consulting with Blair and has now become a lot more ingrained in the business. He's now coaching Canadian partners, U.S. partners. He's very involved in Alair at that point. He's now taken an executive role. And that was where, as we decided to step back away from this startup company, he and Blair reached out to me and said, you've got some time. Would you be willing to help us with this project?
Okay. So at that time, did you start a business in construction?
No.
So when did that start?
Business in construction?
Yeah.
I don't have a business in construction. I just work for Alair. No. When I talk about projects I'm working on, like I'm the president of a nonprofit down here. We're restoring a children's education center. So I take on passion stuff, but that's it. I don't run project management. I don't run my own construction company at all. Sounds odd.
No, the whole thing sounds odd to me, but I'm not going to ruin a second podcast.
No, man. Hey, I believe me, Johnny. I'm interested in any.
No, that's what everyone says when they buy a spec home, and then they walk me through it and they go, "Give me your honest opinion." You don't want it, okay? I would turn to my wife right now as I turn to these two and go, "I'm good."
Well, I think it's that, John, to unravel that a little bit as much as you're willing to. I think what it comes down to is the fact that they're making money on bringing another established builder on board. Is that right?
You're asking me?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the hang up with you.
I mean, you asked if it's a pyramid scheme. Anyone that runs a pyramid scheme is not going to say, it's a pyramid scheme because it doesn't work for their advantage.
Right, but that's
what do you know a pyramid scheme to be?
Well, so what I'm trying to understand is that if you're taking what I thought was 4%, now it's in the 7 to 8% range, the average, percentage for companies to operate and to be profitable. Some guys, for me, it's like 13%. Each area, is it different for each area? Like Massachusetts, California. I know you don't have a lot. After looking at the map, you don't have a lot in our market in California. Yeah. It's like Texas, it's the Carolinas, a couple other spots. But
yeah, so to clarify real quick, Johnny, we don't take 7 or 8%. What I'm saying is your business, you look at here's my gross profit, here's my net profit. Your net profit is a direct correlation to what your overhead is, right? So you got your gross margin, but then what is your overhead as a whole? I'm talking that entire overhead. Our royalty included in all of your expenses that have nothing to do with us, complete overhead, 7.5 to 8.5%. Not what we're taking. You follow me? So we're only 5% the top. You got 4% royalty, 1% brand fund. If you're doing over 5 million, it's 2.5% on the royalty. So they'd be down to 3.5%.
So that's part of the royalty part. So they're two different.
Correct.
Sorry, actually, I had it wrong. So the royalty part that you pay into your franchise is between 2.5 to 4%. Then
Correct.
What you pay for overhead that you don't have to have in house is up to 7%, with 1% going back to marketing.
No, your total overhead, the royalty, the brand funds, and any of the admin services that you're using so you don't have to have in house, and your vehicle costs, your business insurance, any non-billable time of your staff, your phones, any of your business costs, everything, all included. We're trying to keep somebody at 7.5 to 8.5% their total overhead. So if you're a 20% gross profit, you should be realizing a 10 to 12, 13% net margin in your pocket. Like, to be healthy in this industry, the industry average, 5-6%, which is crazy to us. Our benchmark is you should make 10 to 12.
How do the 50 accountants get paid that you guys have?
The accounting team all gets paid per hour. So
yeah, that's where I'm confused. Where's that percentage come out?
That's not a percentage. No, that's over and above. So let me put it to you this way.
You said we pay for that if we're so
correct.
So it's just an hourly. So I get a bill from you guys each month on what accounting you guys have used that was necessary.
Different levels. If it's a basic admin or it's your CFO, your controller, if you have somebody who's keeping your books, right? We're not going to go and hire a CFO caliber person. You're not going to spend $100,000 to have someone in your office that may just be doing job costing. They may just be putting data in. So we have different levels. You're going to have 3 different people on your team. You're going to pay accordingly. You're only going to pay $12, $13 an hour for somebody who's doing data entry, as opposed to your controller, who is a certified accountant. And, I paint this picture because, it's different for everybody. Again, it depends on project size, how many projects you're doing, as to how much that's going to cost you. But one of our offices, just because I just went through this exercise with them, they did $3.92 million on 43 projects in 2019. Their entire expense, CFO, all of their admin, all of their training, everything was under $30,000. It was like $29,400.
And that's what they paid to you?
Correct. And they didn't have to have any staff, right? They didn't have to have a controller. They didn't have to have an admin. So for us, it's the consolidated team is so that you can get a level of service, an in-house service, effectively, that you would have to spend $100,000 to hire somebody with that skill set. You should be able to do it for half to a third of that, right? Because if you don't have any accounting needs today, why have to have an accountant on staff, right? We bear that burden. It's our job. That's where we earn our money. Is we have to be very good at saying, based on the network and the projects, the volume, we need to make sure we're staffed up to this point. So, we may make a little bit less for a year as we overstaff, but you as a partner, your margins stay consistent. If your volume goes up, or your volume goes down, because your overhead's tied to your revenue, you don't have that up and down on your net margins. You can scale up, you can scale down. Your overhead's known because it's going to be only based on your revenues. So if you have no income coming in, you're not paying your accounting team anything. If you've got a project that needs a week of nobody touching it, it's all in the system, your PM's doing all the work in the system, you don't have staff that you're paying to be in your office, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, yeah.
So that's the idea of the consolidated model, right? Is just to hey, pay for it when you need it, not at all times.
So the flip side of that is you have the 50 to 60 accountants or people in that role that you need to, you're scaling that amount of people up and down based on how many people you have under the Alair brand and trying to gauge how much time each person's going to need. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, we try to look about a year out, right? Because we never want to end up in a position where you as a partner, you know, let's say you've got a bang up month. I mean, let's look at COVID did, right? I mean, you guys are a little different, so I hope I'm not touching on the sore subject, but I think all of us didn't know what was going to come when COVID hit, right? There was the faction that said, hey, it's going to shut off. And then there was the other faction that said, well, people are going to be stuck in their house. They're going to want more work. We didn't know what to expect. So we leaned up at the home office level. Like as a franchisor, we said, all right, we need to be prepared. If our partners start to go through some serious struggles and the royalties go down, we need to still be able to deliver service, but we need to do so in a way where we remain solvent. So we made these decisions internally to say, all right, if we cut to here, you know, a lot of us at the leadership team took immediate pay cuts just to say, all right, just to be safe, let's bank this money so we can continue to support our partners. And the opposite happened in most of the markets. Some of these markets just got overwhelmed. I mean, we're having such a tough time even getting trades attention right now because everybody is full bore. Our job and our focus is to predict that as well as possible so that if you do hit this influx of business, we can support it. We can't come to you and say, well, we weren't ready for that. Give us a couple months, we'll get somebody hired. You know, I mean, that's what we have to do usually as independents, but that again is where we bring the value. So we're staffed up a year out. You know, all of our partners could see a 30% increase in revenue. We have enough trainers, we have enough accountants, we have enough operations team to support that growth. So a lot of data. We look at more data than I'd like to look at sometimes.
Yeah, it's. I'm sitting here. I feel like we keep going. At least for me, I keep going quiet because I'm just envisioning how that structure works. But John, going back to the 2.5 to 4%, you relate that to the pyramid scheme, and like what that royalty. Do you feel as though that fluctuates too much, or it's too much of a burden on a builder that's already established?
No, I have no idea. I guess I was just trying to figure out that there's a buy-in that I don't know what that number is. In
77,650, 77,000, 10-year license.
And so we don't know if, because that started in the United States when? Like 2013?
2012. Brought a couple offices in Scottsdale and kind of tested it because we kind of had to Americanize a Canadian company, right? There's a lot of things that are done differently.
So I can't ask how many renews you have after that. Well played.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Well played.
Is that a cash buy-in, or are you guys loaning out that money for buy-in?
We will finance half of it if they meet net worth criteria and we're comfortable with it. Primarily cash.
Ideally cash.
Yeah.
Right.
Large builds.
I'm just super skeptic of this whole thing.
I don't blame you, man. There's a lot to it, right? And it seems.
I mean, you were skeptic and you weren't even in the business.
I feel like you have. All right, so let's say that this is super shady. I feel like you have to lead in the conversation with, well, I wasn't going to believe it myself. Or I was very skeptical to this. Like, you have to, regardless. I mean, kind of like I was touching on before. it's not necessarily our jobs to dig into this and do the research on this company and find out the legitimacy, this, that, the other thing. Like that's on whoever wants to go into this. I think you have to make an educated decision as to whether that's good for you, not good for you. There's obviously negative aspects to this operation, hence them having 100, only 100 franchises. If this were an amazing, if this was like a no-brainer and everyone's going to become super rich doing it, like it would blow up already. I think that there's definitely negative aspects that would be a turnoff to a lot of people, ego-driven industry being one, that it's new and uncertain being another. But there's also positives, I think, to it. And I think that a lot of those positives are that if it is the way that you say it is, and you're able to structure these businesses for people who aren't necessarily the most business savvy people, I think that it could do good for the industry by creating professionalism and creating a process that goes a little bit smoother and having professional systems in place and on board and creating more of a service that you would find in the commercial industry more so than residential, where you don't have the economies of scale to be able to afford such systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And a couple things. First, just to speak to, like you said, there are benefits to the franchise structure as it relates to us not being able to tell stories or lie or be a pyramid scheme. So the one downside and upside to franchising for the consumer, for the business owner, is you have a lot of protections. For a company like us who has no intention of being shady, it's a lot of work to actually go through all these regulators. So to give you an idea, last month and a half of my life has been almost primarily on legal agreements, what's called franchise disclosure documents. The state by state and the federal government, we have to prove everything we say. I cannot make financial promises. I can't say, hey, you're going to be super wealthy as it relates to this. I cannot get away with getting somebody to sign on to something that isn't fully disclosed to them. Before you sign an agreement with us, you get a 200 plus page document, and we have to legally give you 2 weeks. Internally, we have a policy. We will not enter into an agreement without proof that you've put that in front of a franchise lawyer that has advised you of the risks, of the benefits, of exactly what you're getting into. The worst thing in the world that could happen for us is to bring a whole bunch of people in under false pretenses and then having them get a totally different outcome or have a totally different experience. Every partner that's here today and every partner that's not here, because there are some that came in that were not a fit, we mutually agreed to part ways. We list them on that same franchise disclosure document. You can pick up the phone. We give you their phone numbers. We give you all their information. I mentioned before, I talked to 32 of their partners before I got into this. I don't expect anybody to believe me or to believe anybody else, right? Because there's always the question of, well, what incentive do you have if I sign? That's pretty evident. Obviously, you have to make money. I always encourage everybody, we get a few calls in, we'll get some of the details opened up and help them get a tight enough understanding where they've got enough information to ask good questions. And then call other partners. They're going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're going to tell you, here's ultimately what I love about it. Here's some of the frustrations I've had. Here's some of the challenges to going through the transition. There's ups and downs to everything, right? I mean, we pick a business model that we feel serves us, serves our clients, serves our community. There's no such thing as a perfect one. They just don't exist. And especially for those of us, like, I think I've found, and as a whole, this whole group, we kind of operate in this constant state of dissatisfaction. It's like you can always be better. There's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. So we expect you to talk to partners and hear, hey, what can we be better at? But that brings me back to one other quick point. most franchises have a corporate group that says this is the way you do it, and frankly, it's because it serves shareholders, right? This is what you have to do. No ifs, ands, or buts, and we'll void your agreement if you don't. The environment here is very different in that, you know, to Johnny's point, if I walked in and tried to tell you how to build a home, I would expect you to just, you know, nicely remove me from the building. That's not my expertise. I don't have that skill set, right? We are not, as the kind of the management and the leadership team of this company, we're not here to tell you what to do. We see our role as being taking it all from the ground up. I mean, we're here to take the collective group's input. What could be better? What doesn't work? What, from a regional perspective, have you found very different, right? If you guys opened Alair Homes Boston, you would immediately find a lot of things in what we do that don't fit in the Boston markets. So you bring to the table what needs to be different up here. Each region looks slightly different. Websites are evolving, where even the websites are slightly different. We just opened an office here in Naples. You know, his smallest project right now is a $5.3 million remodel. His website and his client base is very different than Jeff Smith in the high country of North Carolina, who's building $2 to $3 million cabin style homes. These people down here are totally different. So this is a ground up developed team and model. This is not a result of Blair being some genius or any of us having any skills that our partners don't have. It's quite the opposite. It's a matter of respecting the fact that we all bring experience and perspectives to the table that others don't have. I know for a fact that the three of you probably have processes or parts of your process or your system or the way you build a home that are better than what we do. And that's the benefit of the collective. Because when you have a mutual respect at the table and you have a group of people who all have at least the same vision and the same passion, you respect their input, right? Like you guys probably talk amongst yourselves because you know you all believe the same things at the highest level. This is an outcome, and the reason I believe it's working is it's an outcome of that, of this is everybody building this jointly. This is not one group of people saying this is the way it should be done. We're pretty humble, and we love being told, hey, I do it better. That's good. That's where the growth comes from. But you have to take that approach. And that's why, to us, the benefit of bringing together experienced people as opposed to just going out and saying, hey, let's build the biggest brand and bring anybody in, there's no value to the people that are here today, right? You're a 30-year veteran. You're not going to gain a ton of value out of somebody who just got in the industry, who's been doing it 3-4 years. You're going to gain value, no doubt. There's new perspectives and there's fresh eyes, but you've been through the ringer. You've made a lot of mistakes. You've learned from those mistakes. You've tried a lot of different things. So you bring a whole lot more value to the group than someone who doesn't have that background and that experience. If that makes sense.
I'm thinking, as far as price point goes with economy and scale and all of that stuff, and you want these franchises to make more. If you were joining this, you would want to make more money than you are now, or have a lot of responsibility taken off of your plate. Otherwise, it'd be a lateral or a backward
or you'd feel like you're in more control.
Yeah. So
right.
Obviously, there's going to be ways that you're lowering cost and overhead, pay more money in taxes at that point. But at the end of the day, do you guys have any control over what people are charging for their projects as well? Or, I mean, realistically, somebody could come into your business model and be like, all right, well, they're going to take X amount of percent. I'm just going to raise my price that much. Or how are you guys controlling that? Or is that, that's your business. You guys do what you have to. We're just going to take our percentage.
100%. I mean, I would say if we're vocal, it's usually with the partners who maybe have a little bit of a limiting belief. Well, my market, I can only charge 14%. all of us on this call know that you can charge what you're worth, and you have to present that value, right? You have to bring to the table with that client, here's what sets me apart, here's what I'm going to deliver. So there's always the difference of cost versus investment and return. Yeah. If we're going to push a partner on markup, we're going to push them up, because we do hate to see someone who is struggling, to make a living when they come in, and struggling to make a healthy living when they're here, purely because, that 7-inch problem where it's like, no, that's all I can charge. And that's that commodity mindset that this industry for a lot of people has ingrained in them. But, we're going to encourage you to charge as much as you can, as much as you feel is fair, and you're delivering that same value to your client. But it doesn't matter to us. It's for your value.
How do you validate that product?
Validate which product?
The higher valued product, that they're charging more for it. Because Toll Brothers could charge more. Does it?
Yeah, I'll keep my feedback on Toll Brothers silent, because I don't know how far spread this will go. But
like 5 people. It's like one more person beyond us listens.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. But again, I guess I don't want to bash the competition, but you're, again, quality is obviously evident. We're not going to be dealing with a discerning client on a high quality project if we can't build a good quality. And
no, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is there's a lot of people out there that we've watched in this industry on social media charge more than they should be, because they're projecting what they'd like to be building, but actually can't execute. I think you've got the marketing, you've got the accounting, and all the other stuff that's back house kind of solved. That's what, when I said earlier, control. I mean, I think all of us would love to have a better handle on control of those things.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably put any number you wanted on that to charge a fee to make that go away for a lot of us. What I'm trying to now pivot to is the control part, with you guys kind of being not in someone's backyard. You talked about doing the audits, on certain franchisees. How does that work with the house? Like the actual you go in and go, you know what, you need to find better cabinetry. Like how does it shake out?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, that's part of that site audit, right? We want to make sure the site's being run correctly, but we also want to make sure that you're not building a low quality product. You're not delivering junk to a client and marking it up. But that's, I think, partially too where the pricing comes in, right? As a client, you're going to see the cost of the product. So we're not going to give you Chinese cabinets and charge you $550 a linear foot, because you're going to see the cost, right? So we're just passing our costs along to the client transparently. So there's a level of honesty that's built in there. I guess, is that what you're saying as far as the quality of product I'm putting in a home, or what I'm delivering to the client?
I don't really know what I'm asking. I'm just trying to figure out if I were to, like, I have this battle in my head is that I never value myself enough. And then you talk to all these other professionals, you should be charging more. And I'm like, I get that. Then there's a whole nother market of people that are charging more that don't have that conscience that I do.
Yeah.
They're just charging more. I just wanted to know how you're being that conscience for them, if it's necessary, or in this scheme, if you're looking at revenues, that's what kind of bumps you guys to getting a fee and everyone else and what you charge. Who is that conscience when you guys benefit as well? If it works, then keep going with it. Right. That's my worry.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. So again, I guess I partially what I just said is one of the answers, right? From a being fair to the client and delivering the caliber of product and finish that goes with the price. That's the transparency side of things. It's a flat markup.
And I'm not cutting you off, but like Nick and myself currently, with high-end projects, when they can look at a price that's in your quote and be doing that for 6 months to a year, they can always go online. I just had this happen the other day where it's like, we have these steel doors we put in. It's like, oh, we love those doors. Let's put these doors in the office. And we get the price back from the same vendor that it's 18 grand. And then they say, no problem. And we start working on it. And then they go, well, I Googled it Saturday and you can buy these doors for $1,800.
Yep.
So like that, I wince at the fact that we're supposed to make sure the client realizes that they're paying X amount of dollars a linear foot for cabinetry when they don't know. They're hoping that it's all in par because they've fallen in love with you. And it's our job to make sure that that's an honest statement.
Well, that's the education factor, right? I mean, it's you understand the difference. So that's in going through that.
Well,
that
I can back it up. I just
process.
worry that if someone's in that franchise spot and that question comes up and someone goes, hold on, I'll have someone call you on that. Like, that's one of the things that, like, someone pushes back on O&P and go, hey, why am I charging 18% on O&P and then as a management fee? If I can't answer that on the ground, it doesn't matter what kind of people I have behind me, like you guys.
Yeah.
So
all of our markup's consistent. So it doesn't matter what the product is, we're charging the percent markup. So we split it into two pieces. And again, I think this is a good educating tool for the client. The reason that we do it, and we explain why. You've got two pieces of where we're gonna charge. You've got the overall markup on the whole project, then you have project management time. So to your point with the doors, well, I can go and buy them on Google. Well, sure, but you can't assure delivery, you can't assure warranty. I'm going to charge my markup because I'm ultimately the one that's responsible to warranty if there's any issues. The company will replace the doors, but I got to eat the labor. So I'm going to go through a supplier that I trust, that I have a relationship with, et cetera. Right. So to me, I think the educating piece with the client is to help them understand, hey, I'm not a charity. I'm not just here to deliver your goods. Right. So we're going to work with suppliers we have a background with, and we know we can hold accountable. And that's the best thing for you as a client. Right. There's risks here. And my job is to mitigate those risks and to make sure that your project's safe, you're going to hit budget, and we're going to not have issues. The transparency of this is what we charge across the board. This is the markup on the project, and this is the project management time. That transparency, I think, to a degree, breeds the level of trust where the client's not questioning, well, why? Like, I can get them cheaper elsewhere. That's the education part, but they don't. I think, again, my experience, and this was in the auto industry and in this as well, and just talking with clients, if we tell them that this is how much it was, and this is our markup, that's one thing. If they can go into their budget and click on the number and the actual quote from the supplier shows up, they can get on the phone and call that supplier, and they're not going to get a cheaper price from that supplier. That's the trust factor. Like, we're not hiding anything. When our project manager builds a budget with a client, they don't just go and put a number into a budget. The whole process involves actually including that bid, that supplier invoice into the budget. So a client can hold our feet to the fire and keep us honest. We try to also take the client through why we separate things out. You as a client can control the project management time. We've got software, we're scheduling, 3 calls a week with you and the PM. You can access this information, but the PM has a cost to me and they have a cost to you. So if you decide you want to wake up every morning and you want to get your cup of coffee and sit out on your porch because the weather's nice and you want to have a chat with that project manager, we want to deliver that level of service to you. But when we build the budget, we're building it off of this communication schedule. And this is what we know we can deliver a good experience with. If you want a little extra hand-holding, that's fine. But as the builder, I mean, how many clients have you had where they're great people, but they're so high touch that they suck up twice the amount of your staff's time? I mean, that's not fair to you guys.
This never happened to me.
Yeah, never. Right? It's unheard of. But that's the client winning and you losing. And we're in the client relationship business and we have to deliver that to a client, but it should be a balance, right? We should be able to deliver as much as the client wants. I mean, you don't walk into, Burger King and expect a 5-star dining experience, rightfully so. Yeah. So we think it should be the same. Like, you shouldn't be contracting with Vintage if you just want fast and low cost. You should be contracting with Vintage because you want high quality projects, but you also want the experience and the expertise and the guidance that comes with that. And you want the values that you've read about and understand them to have. But every client's different. Again, you got some clients that don't even want to look at a selection. Then you've got clients that want to know the measurements of every friggin' fixture, right? There's just, everybody's brains work a little bit differently. So we try to tailor that to the client. And I think the model gives us the ability to help them understand how their behaviors impact the cost of the projects. It should be fair that way. They should want you to be profitable and consistently, because they should want you to stick around. You know, if you starve the builder, they're not going to be around 8 years from now when you might want to do another project. This industry is funny because I think we're the only industry, to my knowledge, that's asked to price something before we know what it costs. And that's not fair. And that's where budgets gets blown. That's where expectations fall short. And you know, we want, and this is, I think, where I have hurt myself in business in the past, is I always was like, well, I need to keep this client happy. I want that relationship. You know, I should have done a better job estimating. Again, I'm not talking about construction, but it's the same thing in restoring a car. Well, that's not fair. Until I've had the time to go through and figure out what exactly my costs are, how could I guarantee myself a fair margin? But again, this industry's trained our clients to say, hey, let's go and get 3 prices. Well, how could you do that if you didn't go through the selection process and you didn't really go through and vet this out and beat it up on the front end to make sure that, hey, I'm making my 12%. I'm always going to make my 12%. These are the things that will move your budget up and down. If you decide that, you know, you want to go with a different tile, if it's the same price, that's great. But I also need to go to the tile setter. I need to make sure that there's no difference in their labor. And that takes my guy time. My project manager has to make those phone calls. So that's another hour and a half into your budget. All right.
Shane,
I think that's
for not being in the industry, you're very well spoken, my friend.
It's like I said, man, there's is alarmingly similar to what I was doing. And I think
shit that I'm going in the car industry, because if I could talk like you in this industry, I would love to do some cars.
It's probably the
business
95
is business in
no's
some
he
ways.
gets.
You know? Well,
I mean, that's honestly my takeaway from this. You know, I feel like we can talk about construction, we could talk about the systems, and I think that that's pretty much the conversation that we have week in and week out. And I think that you're doing a very good job of conveying the business aspect of things and how you're making these businesses successful. I think that what you guys are doing is you're taking a business approach and you're finding a way to implement it into residential construction on some sort of scale that's larger than what people typically do. I think that there's a lot of risks involved with that, being that it's residential, and that nothing is quite as standard in what we do. But basically, you have somebody who started this company who brought in business-minded people to then implement this into residential construction, which usually is not lucrative enough to get business people involved in this aspect of it. So like, that's what I'm hearing, mostly the business end, and it is very well spoken from a business perspective. I think what would be interesting to hear is how this is affecting people, how this is different from what other people have tried to do, or why this is working for you guys. I think that it's probably a combination of all those things. But I guess what kind of differentiates your product from what other people are putting out there? Because at the end of the day, if you guys are charging more and it's the same product, people are going to go elsewhere, right? If you're not creating value for them. So I think what would be interesting to hear and what would be beneficial for you guys and your company would be basically to articulate how implementing these things is putting you guys either ahead of competition on that level playing field, or giving you an opportunity to be successful, or these people who possibly had trouble doing that beforehand.
So just to make sure I follow, you're talking from the B2B side, from us to another business owner joining us, or are you talking are those business owners dealing with clients where the value prop is for the client?
I think either, because I think it's very linear for me listening to this to see, hey, you guys are implementing a really good business model into construction. And I think that we could beat a dead horse in that aspect of things. And I think that a lot of people can wrap their head around the business side, like what you're doing to implement a business. It's very similar to what everyone's doing on a small scale. You guys are just looking for a way to kind of scale that to more than one company, to 3 companies, to 100 companies, to 200. And I think that it's your processes, but I don't think that your processes are necessarily that different than what I'm doing, that what Nick's doing, that what John's doing. I think that you're finding people who don't have a handle on those processes, or who are looking to scale and don't have the network of people or the tools at hand to do so, and you're helping them along that path. So it's beneficial to you, it's beneficial to these people. But I also think it's important to hear what you're doing, how that's affecting your customers, or how that's affecting your franchises to be able to offer something more than they were before. Because I think for you guys to be successful, you have to scale, or people have to make more money, right? So what you're putting in place, how is that helping either create a better product for your customers, better customer relationships, or just helping your business owners basically have more successful businesses?
Yeah. So that's there's so many layers to that, right? I think at the
That's a typical Tyler question.
Lots of layers. I love it, man. I love it. At the most foundational level, I think it's about focus, right? Like, let me ask you guys a question.
Not allowed.
What part of the business do you love the most of what you do? If there was 1 or 2 things you could do every day, and Tyler, I'd ask you first, right? What would you do if it was all you had to focus on in your business? What do you think would be the most enjoyable?
Not the business. Which is where like a company like you comes in.
And if all you had to do was focus on the client and the project, right? So you knew you had a world-class team that was taking care of you on all the other stuff, and you could just be 100% minding those couple of things. I mean, you can imagine the impact that would have on your outcomes in the business on those items, right? So
for sure,
the amount of time on the front end. I mean, as business owners, again, you are projecting your brand. You are the one that builds that brand. You're the one that builds the trust with the community. I mean, that's the thing with custom. Doesn't matter what the sign is. The client needs to trust you, and they need to trust your team. So as a result, the highest and best use of our time as business owners in this industry is being in that seat. It's out finding the right relationships. It's out finding the right clients, explaining to the clients what our value proposition is, and, kind of being that business development person. But in addition to that, it's leading your team. It's really building a team around you that can operate wholly autonomously, and helping to develop them at a personal level so that they have the same mental buy-in, and you built a culture where everybody's there to support each other. That to us is where the owners, their lion's share of their time should be, right? And when you can have that level of focus where 85% of your time is on those couple of items, you're going to have more breakthroughs. You're going to have them faster. So I think from an owner's perspective, it's about that. It's about knowing, okay, I've got all these other things covered. I can focus on the part that I think I can be most impactful on. And the byproduct of that, I think, just trickles right down to the client's relationship and the client's experience. Because if you can focus on the right clients only, right? I mean, hey, there's plenty of clients out there that they might have a big project, and it might be a fun project, and we might like it on the surface, but they end up being the client that no matter what we do, they're not happy. And that's miserable for everybody. That hurts our team. That hurts our trade partners. That hurts us. So if we get really good at just refining who we take in, what type of projects, supporting our team, and creating that environment, that comes across to the client. Like if you've ever done business with a company that had a miserable team running it, it's pretty evident, right? I mean, as business owners, it's more evident to us. When you're dealing with a discerning client base, you're probably working with a lot of business owners. So being able to create an environment that everybody is happy to show up to work, and they're proud of what they're doing, and they know that, you as that leader has their back, and there's some alignment there. I think that correlates down to how the client goes through this experience and what their enjoyment is. So I think it's kind of one and the same, right? Where if you create that focus and you have people that are just really able to become the best in the world at what they do, and they don't have to wear multiple hats, the end result is going to be better for the client. I think the big thing for us outside of that, again, the basic kind of fundamentals of the business, a client in this industry, in more and more as time goes on, I think in our generation, it's different. We're informational. Like we want to understand what we're getting, what we're paying, things like that. And I think it's becoming more accessible for people to get that information, whether it's accurate or not. To Johnny's point, they go online and they find, Amazon prices, and it just says, well, 80 by 36 steel door. That's the same thing. People are dangerous when they go off and they get that. But if you have, for example, a project manager who is taking the client through that process from start to finish, and again, just like you as an owner, that's their focus. They don't have to think about, hey, did I code that invoice correctly? And did that get to the front desk? And, so we take that focus from the owner into the PM, and the PM's roles are very specific, so they can just focus with the client. That same level of focus, again, delivers a tighter budget because there's more thought put into it, because that's all their time is. It develops a much tighter timeline because they've had the time to really vet everything out with the trades. And when we move into construction, they've got the time there to actually contact everybody, put the schedule together, move it around accordingly. I think the hyper delegation, again, is important for the budget, for the entire construction of the project before you go into construction. So I think, again, all those things, and I think the quality is the one piece that, we don't have, aside from the QC and the fact that, hey, we're bringing you in because we know that you feel the same way we do, like you're building high quality projects. We're not here to teach guys or hold guys' feet to the fire in regards to the quality of the project. We just don't have that issue. I mean, we don't have anybody here that's trying to build cookie cutter. It's just not the business that we're in. You're not surrounded by a group of people that are cookie cutter builders. You're not going to fit in here. So fortunately, I think our due diligence and the fact that we're not looking to bring anyone else in, we don't really have to police the quality. I don't think you're going to walk onto any Alair job site and say, well, that's low quality construction. Don't get me wrong. We've got some projects that we've done, affordable housing. They're not going to be high-end cabinets, right? But that's what the project called for. But we're definitely not out building a high-end residential project and trying to shove anything into it, because we couldn't get away with it. Our partners couldn't. So clients got visibility.
One of the questions I had that led me into that was that, like, let's say Nick's got his own cabinet shop. I have a lot of preferred guys that I squeeze every ounce of craftsmanship out of them to get the best price for our clients. Mm-hmm. And with that said, that's what creates my brand. Yep. Why would I give that up to then put your name on my truck? I feel like the better scenario for you guys is like, I shouldn't like say it. Let's just say Joe Schmo's company powered by
Alair Homes. Yeah.
Instead of like anybody, I guess the hang up for me is that there's a certain level of quality, which you've definitely worked your way around it like a well-written politician to get where I want to be, is how do I, there's a level of builder that will give up their brand. And I feel like it's the same people that, I know we air quotes put the word mediocre into it, that will give up a brand. Like I wouldn't give up my brand, but I'd love to get the back office help. I don't think there's anyone that would ever listen to this and say, I got that handled. Like I think it no matter the project, the client, it always differs. So why not do it?
Yeah, why not buy the license and keep my brand?
And then have powered by Alair at the bottom.
Yeah, I could tell you we definitely would have thousands of offices at this point if that was something that we were willing to do.
If it worked, then do it.
Yeah.
Like why not help the industry?
Know what? It doesn't align with what we're trying to do necessarily, right? Because that would actually dilute the value to you. I know that sounds weird.
You've been preaching about scaling this whole time, and then you don't want to scale?
Yeah, no, I want to scale for the sake of scale.
No, for the back office stuff? I mean,
John,
you're going to compile a bunch of craftsmen.
John, let's picture this.
Brand.
Let's think about building this, and it will be powered by the Modern Craftsman.
The MC. Yeah.
The MC.
But let me ask you a question. Why the Modern Craftsman? Why isn't it NS Builders and Vintage and TRG Homes?
It's not about us, my friend. It's about helping out. It's about helping the economy. It's about helping all the people out there that need it. You know, a good leader eats last, and I don't put my name on stuff.
But that goes completely against what you just said, doesn't it?
No, I mean, if I'm going to help other people, if I'm doing my own product, that's the reason why I left my last company. If I'm pouring my heart and soul into stuff, then it should have my name on it. If I'm going around trying to help people, I don't need to put my stamp on. I don't want them wearing a vintage shirt. Just like, come on.
Some people do.
Why can't you do both though? Right? Why can't you help? Like, I mean, you're helping people with vintage, man, right? I mean, you're pouring your heart and soul into it. You're building, you're delivering more than let's be honest, majority of our industry would deliver to them because it's your heart and soul. You're not just delivering the bare minimal of what you have to. You care enough about it where you're going to go to what you're comfortable with. So I think when you really step back and think about the whole idea of branding, and if it was, I'll pose it this way, because you just said something that resonates with me. I'm about impact, right? And if I find something that I think benefits people, if it's good for me, that's great. But it's a lot better if it's also impacting people's lives in a positive way. And I think what the industry we're in here, we're in a position to impact people's lives at a level no other industry is. I mean, I can't think of a single one that has this much impact on somebody's life, short-term and long-term. So if you had the ability to bring your heart and soul and everything that you care about and everything you're proud to deliver to a client to 50 of them a year, and you knew you could impact 50 lives a year in that meaningful way, and for you could drive around town and see, man, I did that, my fingerprints there, and there. And the only thing that was required was that your business now became the Modern Craftsman. And Tyler's business was the Modern Craftsman, and Nick's business was the Modern Craftsman. But you guys all believed the same thing, and you delivered the same quality, but you did it collectively, and you could do it at a larger scale. How much negative is there? Right? Is it not still you? Is it not still what you care about? And collectively, if there are, Tyler, you're in what, Philly area more, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't, I guess it's tougher to kind of correlate the three of you, but let's take Nick and Johnny and say, how many signs do each of you have on the ground? A dozen at a time. Well, if there were 24 around your market, your brand is that much more known, and that's going to create that much more organic interest. And as that collective starts to build up, the benefit to having one brand amongst everybody is that compounding effect. Again, it's like you have to be equally as, if not more profitable. You have to have a better quality of life, but you also need to have a bigger buildup. And again, if we just boil it back to the business side of things alone, we all like to think that we've got some legacy. You guys have kids, right? You hope the kids might take this over and carry this on. But if not, what are you going to do with it? You're going to try to sell it. At the end of the day, a valuable brand is usually a brand that has, again, the ability to operate whether you're in Boston or in the Caribbean. That's a big piece of it. But the other piece is also through scale, right? Brand is usually built through scale. It's not reasonable to think that you could take vintage, because it is your heart and soul, and you're very particular about the quality. You're not going to want that to be a national brand. We couldn't have made Alair a national brand if we were trying to control it. It's because it's all of those independents like you who say, this is what matters to me and this is what my brand represents. And that correlates with Alair. So I'm okay with the sign change, because at the end of the day, my clients in my market, they're not doing business with Alair. They're doing business with Johnny or Nick or Tyler. That personal brand is really what instigates the trust. That's your trade partners aren't happy because they work for Alair. They're happy because Johnny and team treats them well, and they're respected and they're paid well, and you appreciate the quality work. So at the local level, the brand doesn't matter as much as we might think, as long as it truly represents what matters to you. But when you start to look down the road at what am I building here and what's my return long term, it's more beneficial. You get a higher rate of improvement and everything else if we're all flying one flag. And I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive in some ways, but it's the reality, and it's why we really believe firmly in that. And, you know, additionally, you're going to be a lot more thoughtful in the decisions you make if you know that if you make a mistake that impacts you negatively, it could take Nick down as well. Right. And that's an important part to our culture here, is that we all treat each other like family. Right. We've all got buddies we have a good time with, we go drink a beer with, and you probably wouldn't leave your kids with all of them. Right. Just, hey, here, you take them, I trust you, and you're gone. It's a different level of trust in a partnership. You truly got to trust your life with these people. One sign, one brand, everybody flying that same flag, that accountability is built in. And I can assure you, if you take something sideways or somebody goes to your job site and says, man, Alair Boston is building junk, you're not going to hear from me. You're not going to hear from anybody at the league. You're going to start hearing from the partners that are like, hey, man, that's not what we're about. Like that, we don't, that's not cool. You gotta make some changes. So it creates a level of accountability internally, and responsibility to each other. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you started to speak to the legacy and everything else, because as you were talking, that's what went through my head as far as being a hang up for people, that no matter what, if it's the perception of your own personal brand to the customer, or, you know, that whether it's Alair or Johnny or Nick or whoever's names on there, that they're getting the customer experience of whoever's running that operation. I think that's one thing, but I also do feel that your personal brand is that it's a personal brand. And I think that there is a difference for people like John, you know, who has two sons, where like, hey, you know what, passing vintage off to my sons, although it may be the same thing on paper and your customers may have that same perception, passing vintage off to his sons would be different than passing Alair off. And I think on paper, maybe it's the same exact thing, but I think that there is that personal brand and that legacy that I think is going to be tough to give up for a lot of people. And I think that at the end of the day, no matter how good you offer it to people, that's going to be a tough point of entry for you guys, that a lot of people get into this because they want to create that legacy, and they aren't willing to give that up for their own personal reasons. And that's not good or bad, but just something that I kind of thought about while you were talking about legacy. There's always two sides to that.
100%. And there's, you know, rightfully so, right? I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. It's, you know, you should take that level of pride in what you do and what you built. It's definitely not, it's not going to be for everyone. It's going to be for a very small portion of people. Right. And there's, you know, again, I think at the end of the day for us, it's not we're not in any rush. We're not trying to capture the whole industry. I mean, if we're fully subscribed, let's say, you know, 10, 20 years from now, we have all these seats filled, because it's going to be a limited, it doesn't make sense to just try to pull everybody into this. It won't work. We're still going to operate at less than 1% of the market opportunity in this industry. Right. So there's no way that this is going to be everybody. And like you said, we've got brands. We got one brand here that 67 years under the brand, 250 years in the market of Savannah, Georgia. You know, he was third generation. He brought that brand in here. And there's a number of them, not quite that old, but there's a number that are 20, 30, 40 years. That was his decision, right? And that made sense for him. But, you know, to your point, I mean, Johnny, you got two boys that you hope will take this over. That's a very different conversation, you know?
I mean, I don't know if that's the case. The more we talk, the more questions arise. So we shouldn't keep doing this.
I do have one question, and then I should
if you're
spend
40
Sunday
in the business, why wouldn't, if he doesn't have his numbers figured out by then, and that's the biggest, you know, draw, What is it the back end? Is there some sort of promise of, hey, we will help sell your company to another franchisee? Like, what's the draw for that? If I'm
That's
70,
a benefit for sure.
If I'm 70 and I'm just like, you know what, I'm giving up on this. Like, what's the draw? What do you?
Well, I mean, you say giving up, right? I don't think it's a giving up thing necessarily. He was third generation. He's early 40s. He wanted something that was a little bit better quality of life for him, right? He watched his father and his grandfather work crazy hours and work for low margins. So for him, it was a matter of, I can build a business that's more efficient. I got a higher quality of life. I can continue to deliver this high quality of project, but do it at a larger scale. I mean, again, there's so many pieces to it, right? As far as how many project managers can you train at that level if they're only staff? And in a model like this, we're looking for project managers that want to be business owners. You can set up a minority partner that's running that office, and you can do it again, and you can keep scaling it over and over again. So some people, it's that they want to replicate it. They want to grow into other markets, but they don't want to have all the risk that goes into the investment to do that. And yeah, I mean, you just hit on something that a lot of these guys recognize is, I would like to sell it. In his case, his kids are definitely not going to take it over. So he knows that there's a high potential that he's the last generation of the Strong family that's going to be running this business. So he wanted to set it up where he could either have some sort of succession plan that grew into place before he was ready to step away, or he could sell it at the end.
Are you guys potentially considering buying it and just having it be owned by you guys?
No, we don't. We don't really get into the corporate owned stuff, but consider the fact that, again, this comes back to that same brand name. Any Alair owner is operating the same process. If they're in the Southeast region, they have the same staff. So their accounting teams are the same people. They deal with the same trainers. They all fly the same flag. So my office in Decatur, Georgia, could go down and buy Savannah, and it's instant. They already know the team. The culture's, the same from one office to another. They all have the relationships. They know exactly how the business operates. It's instant. So to the office in Decatur, that business is worth way more money than to somebody outside Alair, because they already run the same business. So there's a built-in buyer group here that will pay a premium for your company because they know exactly how it operates. They've been running the same one. So there's definitely an advantage there.
So before we wrap things up, did Blair create the logo because he has a secret girlfriend named Victoria, and he can just turn it upside down when he leaves Allison, and then it's like basically Valair? Doesn't have to rebrand. He just turns everything upside down.
Blair's gonna listen to this and be like, "What the
right?
Awesome, great content, boys.
Damn Northeasterners."
I'm on to him. He's going for world domination.
Yeah, man.
I guess between that and the hazing to get in, I mean, those are, I don't know, gotta figure that out. Then maybe I'm on board.
No,
Tyler,
man, it's
Tyler will get down with the hazing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that depends. Maybe.
Johnny's still torn with questions over there, man. He's like, I want to unload
it's
right
Sunday
now.
Sunday morning, man. I think you did a much better job than the past one. Well spoken, well done. Yeah,
I see you got a This Old House shirt on, man. That's again, just to kind of paint a picture of the quality. We're actually COVID threw a wrench in it, but we're supposed to be this season's episode, or this season's one of the seasons in Decatur. We were getting ready to start filming when COVID hit.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's thrown a lot of wrenches and things, man. I think the most of which is like, I mean, this is cool. I think we're all adapting pretty quickly to video conferences. Even some people that I couldn't get on a video conference before now. But man, it's tough. Not like, I got my family up in New York. We were supposed to go up in September, and like Nick, I think I said to you, I was like, man, while I'm up there, I'll swing over, we'll grab a beer, and boy, it's
very different.
I'm ready to start traveling.
I'll bring my paddle. Good, John.
Well, Shane, if nothing else, I think described another model in this industry and kind of shed light on, how this could be beneficial. Like Tyler said, there's a lot of benefits to this. And, if we want to call them negatives, the negatives are just kind of personal decisions. And, the reference that you made to, say, me and John partnering, it makes me think of when we had Paul Wright from Kochman on here, where that, it was very similar. It's like two good cabinet makers, kind of competing with each other, just said, what, screw it, let's partner together and dominate, with a wider bandwidth. And that is, kind of, if you making the reference back to that is probably more relatable in sense and understanding it. But, of course, giving up the brand, to Tyler's point of, it's ego driven and it's, maybe it's legacy, or maybe it's, this is what I built and I don't want to give it up. There's
pride.
There's what?
Pride.
Yeah. It all comes down to, if it's the right decision, and I know we already said it, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a decision that each individual has to make. And if it's the right one and the benefits outweigh the again, if we want to call them negatives, then that's for them to decide.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I would say, leave you with this, man, because I know this is an important thing to you guys. And I think for us, it's, Tyler, you said it a couple times, it's about elevating this industry and elevating those in it. If this is not a fit, I definitely would encourage people to learn from, what you guys gain from here and what you deliver to listeners of this, and what we deliver or we gain as a group here. Collaborate more, man. Like, reach out, talk to others in the industry, and spend the time to talk business, right? And talk about what's working for them and what's not. And I think, again, in 6 years of being in this industry, I don't think it's any different than a lot of others where we all feel like we're giving up some secret if we're being completely vulnerable and honest, even with those in our market. And I just think as a whole, man, there's so many of us that could just capture more market share. And I hate to sound like it's like, an ill intent, but I'm just not a fan of people making money in this industry that are doing it in a bad way, that aren't really serving the client. So I think the more we collectively talk with each other and find better and stronger strategies to collaborate, the better we can make this industry, the better we can make it for clients, and hopefully choke out the people in the industry that are just in it for bottom dollar and really don't care about the client or the quality, So appreciate what you guys do here and getting people into these conversations to talk about what's working and what's not. And I hope more people in the industry to continue to move in this direction.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks, man.
Appreciate you being on, man.
On a Sunday morning.
Sure. Appreciate you having me.
Go
play in the dirt.
Yeah,
it's
go
officially your church, John.
That's your church, John? That looks nice, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
See ya.
But next week, we got Sid and Shay McGee from Studio McGee. We're going to be talking about their new Netflix series.
We're going to be on their Netflix show.
Are we?
I'm going to talk about how their whole business blew up faster than Nick's did.
Yeah.
Set the record.
They're the exact same age.
Yeah.
I'm considering getting their holiday catalog and just like sitting here with my legs crossed reading it when they pop on.
with slippers on.
I think we might have it.
All right, guys. Well, we will catch you guys next week. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Talk is cheap. The folks at Duration will tell you that their best customer is someone who bought the product 18 months ago or 2 years ago, installed it, and then circled back to see how the product and their craftsmanship performed through the seasons. If you're serious about your work, take a serious look at Duration. And to learn more about Duration poly-ash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com.
I did it. And everyone gave me crap about it when I mited my office.
Right?
No, B-Groove. Come on, watch your tone.
B-Groove? My
B-Groove.
bad.
Yeah. Everyone's doing
Watch
nickel
my
gap.
tone. Don't you have shiplap on the ceiling behind you?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to do it everywhere. Just drench my entire house with it like they do on this old
shiplap. Oh, wait. Have you guys seen, what is that? It's like all over Dude Dad.
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, it's this like husband wife couple that just they film. They're hilarious, but he always dresses up as her and like says like what my wife acts like during a home renovation, and she'll do the same thing, dress up as him and be like and act like him. But he's dressed up as her and he's going around the house and he's like, I think we should put shiplap here, shiplap, and it's like, and it's like, what would Joanna get, or like WW,
Yeah, right.
Joanna, what would Joanna Gaines do? And then she dresses up as him, and he's like, "Hey babe, I gotta go to Home Depot get a new 18 gauge. You cool? I'll be back. All right." And it's just it's extremely funny.
I gotta look it up.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very good.
By the way, everyone keeps asking on the survey and in some DMs that old topic of having our wives on the podcast.
I don't know if my wife is up for it. She's like, "What am I gonna talk about?" I'm like,
Mine would for sure.
Yeah, figure it out.
Tyler, you missed it early, but my wife listened to my podcast with Brad at AFT, and she had like an intervention with me Friday and told me I should go to counseling straight up. Like, she said I took it well, and I was like, wow, I guess.
John's like, I've gotten a ton of positive feedback. Then my wife talked to me.
Yeah, and it was like my whole world flipped
Collapsed.
upside down and then turned inside out.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
That's my wife.
Yeah, my wife would definitely be on.
I'll talk to Meg. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.